Stop! Stop!
On! On! Let's see Donald take a dip!
We're running out of rail! Driver, fireman, you'd better jump clear.
They did so, dropping some sand as they went. Donald gripped with all his might, bringing all his weight to bear against the trucks.
Oh no!
With one final screech of tortured metal, the train stopped. Donald looked down, seeing only water beneath his buffers.
Donald, are you alright?
I think so. Get me back on solid ground.
Duck quickly moved the trucks out of the way, then returned to help Donald. He was coupled up to the Scottish engine, and slowly began pulling him back. Once Donald was back on the rails, his crew inspected him for damage. As they were doing so, the harbour master strode up.
Donald, I'm gonna have to make a report to your controller. Can you tell me what happened?
It was just my usual run. You know, bringing trucks the mile or so from the wee railway, shunting the harbour and returning.
The harbour master nodded.
Go on.
As I came into the harbour, the trucks decided they wanted me to have a swim. I think you saw the rest.
I did. Thank you, Donald.
As the harbour master headed back to his office, Donald's driver stepped around in front of him. You should be able to get to the Callan sheds under your own steam, Donald, but I won't have an inspector examine you before you take a load.
What about my trucks here?
Don't fuss yourself, Donald. I'll look after him.
Thank you, Duck.
Donald's crew climbed back into his cab, and the Scottish engine shuffled carefully out of the yard. As Duck shunted the trucks out of the way, he could hear them giggling and joking amongst themselves.
Hey! Stop it, you lot!
He commanded, but this just amused the trucks even more.
Don't like the thought of Donald ending up underwater, Duck. Maybe we should have pushed you in instead. See if you can swim like your namesake. Quack, quack.
I said shut up!
But the trucks continued to mock and joke, and Duck was glad to finally leave the yard. As he headed back along the line, he couldn't help worrying. These sorts of mishaps weren't common on his branch line, but they'd been having a lot of them in the last couple of weeks. This was not how the Little Western ran, not at all. On top of this, it also seemed that the truck's teasing had become a bit more malicious than before.
Driver, I think there's something wrong here.
What do you mean, Doc?
I've not seen the trucks behaving this badly in quite a while. Not since before you and I started working together, in fact. It doesn't bode well.
You're worried about what they'll try next?
Yes, quite worried. Donald nearly ended up in the ocean earlier. I don't want to think about what they may try next.
Unfortunately, Duck wouldn't have to wait too long to find that out. A few hours later, Oliver was taking a slow goods up to Tidmouth. He was covering for Donald, who, as it turned out, did need some minor repairs. Oliver's run had been quite smooth, so far. He was just emerging from a tunnel near Tidmouth Holt when a loud bang sounded out, followed by the sharp hiss of a broken brake line.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Duck looked over from the station platform.
It's the trucks again, isn't it?
A familiar giggling answered Duck's question. Oliver's guard quickly inspected the train, then strode up to the tank engine. We've had a violent separation between the first two trucks.
A violent separation?
One of the brake connectors is damaged. I can't reconnect it. Oliver sighed. He knew what that meant.
Just open the brake valve then. We'll run as a Class 7 train to Tidmouth. It's only a few more miles.
Oliver knew he'd be a little late, but it was his only real option. A few minutes later, Oliver was underway once more. He had to run at a reduced speed, as the last few trucks in his train couldn't be properly braked. As Oliver's train passed, Duck couldn't help feeling worried. Ever since the incident with SC Ruppy, the trucks had never messed around with Oliver. Someone must be putting them up to it, and it had to end. Duck wasn't the only engine who felt this way, as the Scottish twins made clear in the sheds that evening.
This business with the trucks is beginning to get beyond a joke. Aye, it's beginning to get dangerous. It's no longer just bedlam and delay they're causing. You can say that again, Dougie.
Do you know if any of the other lines are having these problems?
I'm not quite sure, Oliver. I asked Bear about it when I saw him in Tidmouth earlier. They've not had any trouble from the trucks on the main or the branch lines. Not more than usual anyway.
Oh, so it's just us then?
It would seem so. Trucks have always been troublemakers, but I've never seen anything quite like this.
I have.
Said Duck, who had been lost in thought.
What would that be then?
Here on Sodor, before you three arrived. When I was working in the main yard.
You mean when Diesel put the trucks up to mischief? But he wouldn't do that sort of thing, not now.
Aye, he even came here and apologised, as I recall.
Duck knew what Donald meant. One winter evening in 1984, Diesel had told Henry, Gordon, James, and the other mainline engines why he'd lied to the trucks on his first visit to Sodor. But there had been someone else to whom he'd owed an explanation and an apology. The next morning, Diesel had swapped duties with Bear. While the high mech looked after the yard, Diesel had taken one of his maintenance of way trains along the Little Western. As Diesel had hoped, this had given him a chance to talk to Duck. He had explained his motives to the Great Western engine, and given his apologies. Much to the Class 8's surprise, Duck had forgiven him. Diesel hadn't been hoping for that at all. He'd only wanted to apologise.
I'm well aware of that, Donald. I wasn't accusing Diesel at all. But I can't shake an overwhelming feeling of deja vu. This situation now feels almost exactly like those events back then.
Duck glanced over at the others.
It is a fact that Diesel did put the trucks up to causing mischief on his first visit here. His experience of doing that could be useful. I mean, if someone or something is behind all this, Diesel may know what to look for.
It takes one to know one, eh, Duck?
Something like that.
Word of Donald's mishap had spread across the railway. Early the next morning, Percy and Diesel were discussing it in the main yard.
Oh, it wouldn't have been pleasant for Donald.
Percy shivered, remembering his own dip in the ocean.
Ugh. You know, some trucks actually pushed me into the ocean.
Really?
Well, I did ask them to. I just wanted to see what was beyond the danger board, that's all.
Oh yes, that old trick. But I can't believe Donald, or any of the other engines on the Little Western, would do something like that.
They wouldn't, not at all.
But that's more than what the trucks usually do.
That's what I thought too.
Duck said as he stopped alongside.
Well, the trucks have always been mischievous.
Mischievous, yes, but this is downright dangerous. Have you not been experiencing this on your branch line at all, Percy?
No, it's just been business as usual.
Duck frowned as Percy departed.
In that case, Diesel, I'm going to need your help.
Diesel looked closely at Duck. Although they had settled their differences, he and the Great Western engine hadn't exactly become close friends. What do you have in mind? Duck recounted the conversation in the Callan sheds last night.
So whatever's going on, we need to put a stop to it, and fast.
But how do I come into it? I don't know anything about this business at all.
Well, I don't mean to imply you do, Diesel, but I thought you might be able to, well, tell us what to look out for. I mean, you do know how this sort of thing is done.
I see. Diesel had to admit that Duck did have a point. He had arranged for similar trouble once before. That experience might as well be put to good use. I suppose the best thing would be to tell you how I did it back then. That may give you an idea of what to look out for.
Alright, fire away.
I was very careful, Duck. I waited until I was alone in the yard. You had gone to get Gordon's coaches, and I took that opportunity.
So, what you're telling me is that we should keep a close eye on the trucks.
Yes, that will reduce their opportunities. There's also the way that I presented my jokes to the trucks. I didn't just say, Duck calls Gordon galloping sausage, and so on.
So, how did you put it?
I see you like jokes. You made a good joke about me yesterday. I laughed and laughed. Duck told me one about Gordon. I'll whisper it to you. Don't tell Gordon I told you. It was more or less the same for Henry and James. Duck didn't reply, and there was a strange look on his face. Duck, are you alright?
Oh, yes, it's just I didn't realise it had been that easy.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize hearing about it would have that effect on you.
Neither did I.
If it helps, it wasn't that easy. You have to know what to say and which trucks to say it to. That takes detailed knowledge. I also presented it as something fun that the trucks really shouldn't have been doing. That is the sort of thing you should be listening out for. Duck smiled. As he'd hoped, he had obtained some useful advice.
Thank you, Diesel. I'll tell Donald, Douglas and Oliver to look out for those sorts of things.
Duck, wait. Duck stopped. He looked back, puzzled. Duck, I was wrong.
I know, but you've apologised and I've forgiven you already. It's water under the bridge, Diesel.
What? Oh, I didn't mean 1958. I was talking about just now.
Just now?
Yes, I've only just realized. That advice isn't the best thing I can do for you. It's the least I can do.
Go on.
As much as I hate to admit it, I do have a certain skill when it comes to manipulation. However, it is a skill I choose not to use. But both of us know it has been useful before. Duck thought back to the Christmas of 1966.
That's right. Gordon said you got Thomas and Percy talking again after that big argument they had.
That particular feud had nearly shut down the Farquhar branch. Indeed. It strikes me that your problems with the trucks may call for something similar. If you do find out someone is causing it, I may be able to come up with something.
I see. It won't disrupt my branch line, will it?
Not at all. I can understand why you may have some misgivings, but the fact is, Montague, for all the apologies and reconciliation between us, I've never really made it up to you.
Until now?
This does seem like an opportune moment. To be perfectly honest, I still feel a bit guilty about the whole thing. Duck didn't reply for a moment. There was something else bothering him.
It's not that I don't trust you, Diesel. It's just, well, this sort of manipulation isn't the way we did things on the Great Western.
I understand. If that is how you feel, then I won't do any more. Diesel had sounded quite disappointed. A moment later, Duck realized he was being a little bit selfish. There was a bigger picture here, one which he needed to consider.
Donald nearly ended up in a barge this morning. So if someone is putting the trucks up to mischief, it needs to be stopped now. Whatever you come up with may be our best chance of doing that.
Diesel grinned. Thank you, Duck.
Is there anything you need us to do?
Could you ask the yardmaster at Tidmouth to check the switch lists? I'll need to know if there's anything in common between the trains that ran into trouble.
Sure thing, Diesel. I'll get him to do that. Thank you again. Cheerio!
Duck departed a moment later. Diesel went back to work. As he continued with his shunting, Diesel was already considering the situation. From the way Duck had described it, it definitely sounded like somebody was stirring up the trucks. Finding out who would be the easy part. Stopping them would be a different question.